City. 6 Northwest. We got that L-A-C-E-Y. So pretty. Loving it when you rain on me. There ain't nothing like my city.
Problem my whole life. Nobody wants to put it there.
Are you working right now?
I'm always working. Yeah, now today, on the weekends, I usually use community stuff, so I'm always driving around. Like I got one at 6 o'clock night tonight, too, for Boy Scouts, so yeah, that's my weekends, usually. So always doing stuff.
Hey, it's a way to get your face in the community and be that person that everybody looks to, so.
Yep,
you know,
absolutely.
You'll do it person by person.
Mm-hmm. We are recording. This your boy B, aka B Aktiv Laycee, the podcast show with a very special guest, the honored Derek Sanders. Sheriff.
Yeah.
Sheriff, you, sir.
My bad.
Yeah.
You didn't bring your cups, did you?
No, those are in the car, so yeah, I'm going to go all the way out there and get them if I want to get them. So.
I'll be gone by then.
Hop the next train to Mexico.
Yeah.
So before you guys get into your serious questions, I got a couple icebreaker questions. We asked people if they had questions for you.
Yeah, all right.
So somebody very near and dear to me wants to know, how do you know you're sure about your recent engagement? And are you sure?
Oh my gosh.
She is the one.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm sure. Yeah, you know, I've been in and out of relationships here and there, but I was pretty sure with this one, so.
Yeah. The ladies like you.
Oh, well, you know.
We got the sheriff on here blushing.
Yeah.
2 minutes in.
And no disrespect to the fiance. This is all just fun and games, but I mean, this seriously did come from somebody.
Yeah, no, she's a wonderful woman, and I am very sure. With her, I've inherited 3 identical triplets and a 14-year-old, so I've jumped right into all of it. But no, it's been good. And you know what? Like, I started dating her while I was campaigning for office, and
that's what I've seen her. I seen her on the parade last year with you, yeah.
Yep, and the triplets, they were kind of like a good like decompressor for me. Like, I went home, you know, and they were just beating each other up, and I'm like, this is so peaceful, you know.
Yeah.
So, I'm pretty happy with my personal life, and everything's going good. So.
Okay, and then another question was, what's up with the ride-along?
The ride-along. So what I usually do for ride-alongs, because I can't take all 300,000 citizens, is I've been teaming up with a lot of the nonprofits and the charities and auctioning off, kind of like a lunch and a ride-along thing. And so far they've been going for a lot of money. So people have been spending. I mean, I went to one event where it went all the way up to like $1,100, and then they doubled it. So I took 2 people on a lunch for a ride-along, but it raised over $2,000 for a nonprofit. So. It's been kind of a cool methodology. However, if anyone is curious on going on ride-alongs and seeing what we do, they can stop by the sheriff's office, fill out the packet. We run like the little background check and everything, and then we get people out on ride-alongs all the time. So, yeah, it's not just for...
Both of those questions were from 2 different sisters of mine.
Oh,
okay, and then the last one, this one is, it's kind of serious. I can't remember her exact verbiage, but basically they have some type of like community forum where they present things to each other in Seymour Island, right? And so she's wondering, what is someone supposed to do if they hit an animal, right? Are they supposed to, off in the dark, just pull off and endanger themselves by the dark roadways and the unknown of oncoming traffic and try to drag the animal? Are they supposed to cuddle it until it dies?
No.
She was kind of wondering, like, what are supposed to be the regulations?
You can always just call law enforcement. We'll always know what to do. It depends on what kind of animal it is, right? I mean, people hit deer all the time. With deer, you can call us if the deer is still alive. I hated doing it as a deputy, but we go out there and dispatch the deer, put it out of its misery kind of thing. If it's a pet, it just kind of depends. I mean, if it's just a dog with no collar, then we're all kind of stuck. If we have a collar, though, we'll call the family and everything and let them know. But, you know, unfortunately, hitting animals and stuff is part of the world that we live in. And so, yeah, you can always just give us a call. Call 911 for that. Just say, hey, I just hit an animal. You come have a deputy check on it. We'll come out.
All right, for sure.
I don't remember what else I had, but those were the.
Yeah, since we're getting to know you a little bit,
Yeah.
I guess you can ask any of us questions as well. I often say that our actions define our priorities and not our intent.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question is, what would you say your top 3 priorities are with your life, and do you believe that they align with your actions, or do you believe your actions align with those top 3 priorities?
Well, I would say first and foremost, both in my personal life and my professional life, I've really strived to not be hypocritical. That's something that bugs me a lot. I hate people who do stuff and they tell other people not to do it, and they go around and do it anyways. So that bugs me a lot. So everyone lives in some sort of hypocrisy in everything that we do, unfortunately, but I've tried to keep mine as minimal as possible. Just because, to me, like, you can be the best leader in the world. You can say everything that you want, kind of like what you're talking about, but then if your actions out in the community and not what you're doing conflict with that, you kind of lose credibility.
In our cancel culture, that's like, you have to, your private performance has to align with your public performance.
Yep.
Because if somebody finds something, anything,
Oh yeah,
even if it's in your past nowadays, it'll take your career down.
especially if you're a political candidate.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the name of the game in today's politics, right?
Yeah.
I already know whoever's running for sheriff in 2026, 2027 is already looking for anything that's come up, whether it's my collision or, right now, like, we're struggling with the jail staffing. They're looking for any of these little things. And, a lot of that stuff is fine. You can explain a lot of it, but what you can't do is come across as hypocritical, right? I can't, for instance, say that I care about jail staffing and then not go out in the community and recruit for our jail and only focus on patrol, right? Because then they're going to point out that not only have you failed to staff the jail, but you're also a hypocrite because you haven't even tried. You talk a big game, but you're not doing any of it. So
It's funny because I was just thinking in my head and I was actually wondering, so are there certain setbacks or stipulations for being a correctional officer in Thurston County Jail? I know somebody recently, a friend of mine that just recently got hired in Nisqually Jail, and they do have a history. They had been arrested in history kind of recently, not like, I don't know, it's been a few years since the last probably arrest or anything that they had, but they just got acquitted this year. So I'm wondering, in Thurston County, are there
Is it more strict
stipulations? Yeah,
than
as far as
Nisqually?
it might be. I don't have the two of them in front of me to directly compare. But we do have, I will say that on our list of corrections deputies, we may get 50 applicants and 40 of them won't even pass the basic, have you been convicted of a DV assault in the last 5 years? Have you used hard drugs in the last 5 years? We dropped the marijuana one, so that one's increased a decent sized candidate pool, I think.
They can test 5 years back, or is it just like if they
Polygraph. And I think that might be the difference,
okay.
is that I don't think,
Right.
I'm not sure Nisqually Tribal does a polygraph test.
Well, especially if they're
we do.
tribal and they're getting hired, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Me
They got the tribe is doing a really good job right now.
Yes.
I will say that.
Yes.
Between just the expansion of Nisqually Tribe and they're buying up property and kind of getting their land back kind of thing. And they're also, the casino's doing the casino thing. That's how they're funding a lot of it, I'm sure. But also just the amount of stuff that Willie Frank is doing out there, trying to get people out on the canoe, the journeys and all that kind of stuff. It's
That was
I still got to
incredible
go.
experience.
I'm going on one with him. He owes me, so I'm going on one with him here. Hopefully
I
by the end
agree.
of the summer.
I think, and that they made a. I don't know if Nisqually did it, but Puyallup, how they have their 18 money for when. So they changed and they have stipulations. So now the kids have to be graduated,
Good.
and they have to be having some type of career. It's just a lot more
More
It needs to be
incentivized.
how
pointed.
it should be because you're just giving 18-year-olds $400,000 and
It's a lot of money to manage.
Right.
I got when I was 18, I got $36,000 from a car accident settlement for someone hit me. And I thought I was the richest person in the world. So I can't even imagine what $400,000, what some of these stipulations are. So that's good. I think there's some guidance to it, helps people.
Yeah, and sobriety, and then they maintain certain things. So that was impressive that they finally did something like that and stepped up, to control and get things in check.
But as far as the jail, I think that comparing them, I don't know if Nisqually does a polygraph. The polygraph is what we use to verify. Now, polygraphs aren't 100% accurate, but most of the time, we don't have very many people that come back inconclusive, which is kind of the gray area.
Could you have felonies and still be?
It depends on the felony. So I think I don't think you cannot have a violent felony conviction and work at the jail. I think you can have. I think some of them are case by case. But I can't remember off the top of my head. It's the same for both corrections and patrol, so we don't delineate between the two of them. It's the exact same.
Maybe I should just apply and find out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, and all that information's on the public safety website, so you can go through there and you can see what's an automatic disqualifier but you have to remember, it may say it's an automatic disqualifier, and then some may not be automatic disqualifiers, but you can still be disqualified depending on the circumstances. But we encourage people to apply. It's just right now we're struggling to fill those positions.
Right, and do you think that it's because of those guidelines?
I don't know. It's tough to say, because I also think that people who are willing to go spend 12 hours a day, half their life, inside of a jail and be a prisoner, you're looking for a really tough individual mentally. Mentally, that's a tough game. Patrol is really easy. I don't even recruit for patrol. Patrol recruits itself. People are drawn to go do police stuff and go into that career. Corrections, we really have to actually target that. And in 2021, there was a bunch of police reform stuff that went on, and we saw an exodus of police officers across the state. We'd lost tons of cops to other states, and people just getting out of the profession altogether. And that created a vacuum in the patrol arena for all of the departments. But what that did is it made it a walk in the park for any corrections who wanted to jump ship to the law enforcement side. And that's what we're seeing right now. Federal Way's taken like 5 of my corrections deputies this year.
Really?
They're
have you guys raised like your salary for it to try to like incent?
Just the normal COLA that wasn't keeping up with actual COLA. The same as everyone else is dealing with in the entire country right now. It's like our patrol division, I think, got a 3.5% raise, but COLA was 9.5 in the same time period. So, and Thurston County Sheriff's Office, even though we are the biggest agency in this county, we are, I think, the lowest paid now, because the county doesn't have the tax money that cities have. So Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, they all have those extra B&O taxes and things like that they get to pull from.
We got some of the highest cost of living, the highest gas in the country is in Washington right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, things are...
Yesterday I stopped at the gas station before we went to the lake, and I got a bag of ice, chips, dip, and a Red Bull and a root beer, and it was $30.
Yeah.
I'm like, huh?
I know. I filled my boat up yesterday for $310.
Your boat?
Yeah. $310 on an 80-gallon tank. I'm just like,
yeah. One of our episodes.
How long does that last on the lake, though?
I filled up. That's the third time I've filled up since March.
Okay, so it's
pretty decent. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's not bad. But yeah, we came up with the cost of leaving is about $100. You leave the house.
It's about $100.
You gotta have
Especially for
$100 on standby, especially if you have kids and you got kids.
It's crazy.
And
kids are a whole other animal, right? I mean, I know my fiance goes shopping for 3, boys who all look the same that are 7 years old. It's like $1,000 every 2 weeks. I'm like,
yeah, that's a bill all in itself.
So yeah. So to answer your question, though, I would say avoiding hypocrisy has been one of those things that has been something that I've actually tried to take an action on. Community building, which that one, it kind of has a caveat to it, because before I got elected, I didn't do a whole lot of community building, to be completely honest. I was one of the people who went to work and worked so much overtime and tried to help out the crew so much that I went home and I went to bed, and focused on my personal life. So community building has been through one, and then staffing. Staffing has been one of those ones where I've been recruiting. I have been coming up with, I go to sleep every night thinking about the staffing issues at our agency and how it's impeding everything that we want to do for the citizens of Thurston County. So those 3 things are like things that I've said a lot, but I feel like I've also taken some substantial action to actually back
So
up.
how do you do that? Like for me personally, I mean, obviously my prior life was different, but now one of my priorities, if I did list my top 3, is also community building.
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of time networking, connecting, and then I have my 40-hour-a-week job. We work at Climate Pledge at night. I did a graveyard shift last night at 12, and now I'm here.
Right.
And then, so it's like, what do you do for self-care to kind of balance that out? Because I do the same thing. Like, I'll be tired as hell, but my mind is like, I'm writing business plans.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be one of my board members. We're starting the Pursue It If You Want It foundation soon. And part of that is the burnout prevention for care providers. That's going to be one of the aspects. Basically, we have two missions. If this was a pyramid,
Yeah.
one mission is the burnout prevention and the support groups for caregivers, for providers, for CPCs, for those of us in the peer community. We do all these just on example, in my day job, I might do 30 one-on-one sessions in a month, and this is like trauma absorption.
Yeah.
You know, I'm hearing all kinds of things that are wrong with people's lives. So it's rare that someone comes in and is like, everything's great.
Yeah, very rare.
Let's just talk about movies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we're helping navigate trauma.
Right.
And then at the end of that, one of the things was the president of my board, Star, had a problem with going to like helping her own recovery. There's no support groups where she's not running into clients.
Right.
And ethically, that's kind of a thing we got to back out of, and
Right.
we have to give them that space if there's somebody in that field. And so
Yeah.
that's one aspect of the organization working on. The other aspect is a reentry advocate mentor
Mm-hmm.
that will essentially reach into the prisons and try to establish relationships and mentorships with prisoners on their way out.
Right.
6 months to 12 months, probably a cap will be like 18 months to the gate, to where you're corresponding with this person week by week, developing a plan that encompasses anywhere from 9, 18 to 24 months post-release.
Yeah.
And then we'll have someone, a peer, working with this person specifically, and especially if they want to get into the peer field.
Right.
Walk them through all the steps and stuff like
And
that.
that post prison time frame is so critical. We see it all the time because
Absolutely.
I'm living it.
we either immediately are back contacting that person again, or we don't hear from them again because they had a support system in place.
Yeah.
And it
Exactly.
seems like it's one or the other. It doesn't seem like too many people kind of go back and forth. I mean, when they're getting out of prison, they're making a decision with the support group that they have to move forward or go back.
Yeah.
So I would agree.
Well, and
with that.
also
I would've-
providing
oh, go
hope to the people that are getting out, like thinking, oh, I have this opportunity to walk into this job as soon as I walk out the door, and maybe already have housing in place. They don't, or
Right.
halfway housing,
Yeah.
however that looks
Yeah.
for their out
Right.
plan.
Those things are
Um,
definitely defeating.
Having that
not
feeling of hope
Mm-hmm.
to something to look forward to for the future versus the same thing that you just got out. So that's kind of where I think hope is, offering some sort of solution
Definitely.
versus just figure it out. It's basically how it
setting
goes,
up- And they think that they have these programs. I mean, I've been there. They think that they have these things that are helping in these programs, but they're so hard to freaking get into
Exactly.
and to actually establish something, and especially before you get out.
No, they're like unicorns.
Like
they're
when
myths.
I remember when I got out, I was
Absolutely.
crying. I had my family, so of course, I wasn't on the streets, fortunately, but I was in a rush to be my own and have my own and get my own, and I was crying every day, and they're like, "Why are you crying? You're out of prison." I'm like, because I just don't have my own stuff, and it's
Right.
it's fucking depressing. It's really so
I also would say that it's overwhelming to walk,
Absolutely.
have the life that you had before, and then you're walking back with basically nothing.
Yeah.
And it's overwhelming to think, where do I even start?
mhm.
And if there's no guidance to help you start, you're probably going to fall back into past behaviors
Yeah.
more so than choosing a
Us
harder
talking
path
about all
out of
this
your comfort
is
zone.
making me think do people must ask you just crazy amounts of questions, obviously, all the time, and inquiries, and does it make you feel like you're a governor sometimes? You're I can only do so much. I'm just the sheriff.
Yeah, and a lot of people bring me stuff. I think the big thing that I've been able to kind of lean on is that I'm not afraid to tell people I don't know. So people come to me all the time with governor type questions, and I'm not a governor. I'm not a socioeconomic expert. I'm not an expert on race relations. I am not an expert on any of that stuff. I am not even, in my opinion, an expert on law enforcement. I have a little bit of common sense, and I've been able to drive that forward and kind of pull the curtain back and show people what actually goes on a little bit behind the
I
scenes.
do have one more thing. I just remembered, and it reminds me because in your parade last year, I remember seeing on your float thing something about you're here for the kids, right?
Mhm.
So fortunately, where we live, nothing extremely crazy has happened. That does not mean that it never will or can, right? These things are these things are really random. They happen at the most random, unthought times and unthought places. I'm wondering, in the future, what are we going to do to protect our children from two things? One, what happened to the DARE program? The DARE programs that were in place like when I was a kid and in school, right? So who is teaching our kids in school in a trained program about drugs, especially now with fentanyl and things looking like candy and kids thinking it's just cool to pop a pill in high school and whatever. So what programs are we putting back into place for this thing that's devastating our community and our future? And two is like, what are we doing to protect them as far as like, why don't we have metal detectors in every school entryway?
So the first question, what happened to the DARE program? Well, my opinion as someone who went through DARE, I think that the DARE program lost all of its credibility going through those years because of what they did with marijuana. That's when you're going to run a government-sponsored program, it better be accurate and it better reflect real science-based stuff, right?
Yeah, are you referring to like the marijuana is the gateway drug philosophy?
Marijuana is the gateway drug. Marijuana is just as bad as heroin. All these other things. That whole the problem with government-sponsored programs like DARE is that the difference between propaganda and a successful program is a very thin line. Because if you get your facts wrong, it's propaganda, right? I mean, it's part of a misinformation. It's part of a misinformation campaign. And what it did is that it caused people to rebel even harder, in my opinion. And so I think that's the issue with, and that's probably why DARE died out, right? Is that when you take something like marijuana and you put it on the same shelf as heroin, methamphetamine, fentanyl, whatever it is, right at the time, it loses credibility with everyone involved. So I think that was kind of the issue with DARE. As far as what's going on now, Thurston County has an opioid task force. Katie Strozik is running that, and I know that they're trying to get. And I go to meetings about every quarter, and we talk about fentanyl with kids and overdoses and things like that. And we just had one. And what I pitched was basically, the most powerful program the government has ever put on to reduce fatalities for anything was Friends Don't Let Friends Drive Drunk. That was the best program the government has ever put together. That was, I think, in the 70s or 80s, somewhere in that time frame. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but they reduced traffic fatalities due to drunk driving by tenfold. And it was all based on a peer-based program, not the government telling you. It was just hey, we need you to go tell your homies that they need to stop driving drunk because they're killing people. They're killing their families.
Right.
And next thing you know, when you had peers putting pressure on peers to do the right thing, that's where we actually saw success.
Right, just like when they made a new law too recently, well, like not super recently, but within the last few years, where it's not a crime anymore to so a lot of people weren't calling in on their overdose friends because they didn't want to be charged or get a drug charge, right? So there's a new law in place for, what's it called?
That's a while ago. That was a law that basically said that for strictly possession laws, so you're not dealing, but you just have the narcotics. If you call in an overdose, the police can seize all the narcotics, but they can't charge anyone there with possession of narcotics. Because, again, like what you're talking about, right? People would have drugs on the table, someone would overdose, and then no one would call 911 because they'd be busy getting all their drugs off the table and leaving instead of actually helping the person not
One of my friends is a paraplegic for that very reason. His own brother, just put it like this, that scenario happened, and he went to the hospital from his mom's house as a John Doe.
Yep.
And if his brother wasn't working in the ER that night, it would have been however long before they were able to
death, probably.
Identify who did it. And I was personally involved because I knew who he was with.
Right.
And his brother called me and was like, all they want to know, like, who was he with, what he was on, so that they can address it. Right. Because without that key information,
they didn't know. Guessing.
They didn't know what overdose, substance caused what it was causing, and so they were just doing trial and error. And at that point, you're a fucking science experiment in the ER because they just trying to keep you alive. And all it takes is your homie to be like, hey, it's anonymous. I was with him. This is what we did. This is what I seen him do. This is the amount, and fucking this is how long, or whatever. Then they can go get exactly what they need, and get that person right.
And to add on to the things I asked you too, because you're talking about the kids or whatever, and something recently just happened with the kids is like, what are maybe if we could get like the teachers and the school nurses to have Narcan, right? For the things that.
Yeah, and I think that they've already started that. So
there's legislation already in place that's supposed to make Narcan available in gas stations,
Well, like
everywhere.
for us, we just bought a Narcan vending machine for our jail. So every single inmate who comes out of the jail gets a little coupon. If they want, they can walk over and redeem it for a thing
Yeah,
of
and it's
Narcan.
free everywhere. Like
Yeah,
whenever,
except for us, we had to pay for it.
Well, I'm just saying, like, they have
They charge
functions.
the shit out of us for Narcan. As a government agency, we pay like a premium for Narcan. So yeah, but
Don't they have like a needle exchange or something? And they give stuff like that.
Yeah, it's part of their harm reduction philosophies. But my question was, when you were saying, there's two things you said that made me think of this, and you can back me on this too, is, so those meetings you have about the opioids and the stuff like that, are there peers invited to these meetings, or can that be a discussion to where people like us that are either at the top of nonprofit organizations working in, peers?
I think so. It's ran through the. It's done through. I don't know if it's ran directly through Thurston County Chamber, but it's done through Doug Ma. He's the one who always hosts it. It's the. I can't remember what the name of it is right off the top of my head here. I can see it, but I can't. Anyways, but it's a group. Most of it is elected leaders. So you'll see a lot of city council members, mayors. I go as the sheriff. The prosecutor goes, and we all kind of come together at these meetings. I think I've been to 2 so far, where we just discuss. Usually it's a public health thing. Sometimes it's law enforcement. I went and presented them to them for a law enforcement one. But like the first one we went to was about prenatal care and how it disproportionately affects people of color, and how more black babies die than white babies in this entire country. And why is that? Is there something? Is there an actual reason that we can tangibly?
Yeah, the numbers
point out?
are there, but
The numbers are there. What's the cause?
Right.
What's the cause? Right.
Yeah.
So someone gave a really good presentation on that one, and so. Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't.
So maybe
think
it
of-
would be like, because of the way you just described the presentations, maybe it would be a specific meeting designed around that. Like you bring in, a peer nonprofit and say, hey, like we're on the ground
Right.
every day. Like we're talking to the consumers of this thing.
Right.
We're talking to the houseless people every day.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we believe, could be done, or these are some ideas that we can shoot back and forth.
Yeah.
I think.
But I also think it's super important to have somebody that's lived through it and built their way out of it, so that they can kind of have that perspective to add for other people to maybe take advantage of along the way. Like super important to have peers involved.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know if you know, or if you've been, I watch your Facebook. That's another question I'm asking you about. But so since last time we met in my professional setting, I got invited, and I'm on the trophy board.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was a
Nice.
big.
That's huge.
That to me, that's just that shows me that I can have confidence in the system that, as I was growing up, I would have said failed me in a lot of ways. Like there wasn't peers waiting for me. Like there was times where there was juvenile situations that could have went this way, and they just throw away the key and we'll see what happens. And I came out an animal.
Right.
And then it took me years and years and years to
You have to undo it all.
unravel, all that.
You gotta
chaos.
undo it all
and I
and
did it
rebuild.
myself.
Right.
Not everybody's like me.
Right.
Not everybody has the wherewithal to go inside and really look at everything and be like, I gotta fix this,
Right.
because nobody's gonna fix it for me.
It's a tough place to be.
Or with me. It is, especially
Tough
when
place to be.
when I got out, it's like they're holding on to that because they don't know the journey I went in internally to get where I am today. So they're like, oh, you just get out today, you're still that person. And so that's the other thing, that I feel like the idea that doing time itself is being treated as a crime opposed to the crime that got you there. So it's like we're paying twice. Okay, so in 2015, a case happens, a guy gets out in 2022, but that date they're treating as if it was the 2015. So it's like, I haven't committed a crime in almost 10 years.
Right.
But because I just got out, I can't get a job, or I'm still this, or, I'm treated like I can't possibly be, as authentic as I appear to be because I just got out of prison. Like prison is in and of itself is a crime.
Right.
But you're sending criminals there.
Right.
And you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I just feel like I want to be, somebody that can help break that stigma. Because one of the biggest successes that I had was knowing almost a year to the gate that I had all these things lined up. And it wasn't just one, it was multiple people in the community.
Yeah.
None of them, drug related or in the game or whatever, that were just like positive. Like, hey, whatever you need, like when you get close, let me know. Like, I'll get you a phone.
Right.
I'll get you, an outfit. Hey, I got a boss that for sure says pretty much whenever you get out, he'll put you on.
Right.
You'll have a job. And I think when people get that close to the gate and they know that certain things are already set in place, the mentality of how they
Changes.
do that last year changes.
Yeah.
Because then they start pulling away from the engagements of inside that could get them.
Which is a whole other world.
It's a whole nother ball game, and that's part of what I want to bring to the community with Pursue It If You Want It. And I already have our board member essential, our invites are like 15 strong already, just that are willing to be a part of this board when we file for this nonprofit to do those two things I was talking about. And I think the reentry mentor prison project is what I call it. It's going to be a real powerful move, because when people see what I'm doing, I can say 25% of the members in the organization I work for came from watching my social media and seeing, like you say, my private performance is in line with my public performance.
Right.
And they're like, what I'm saying, like, this dude is fucking. I just was reading articles about him being like, this, that, and the other, and now look what, like, if he can do it, I'm calling him.
Right.
And they're specifically like, I'm only doing this because I saw you doing what you're doing, and now I feel like if anybody can help me, it's you, because therapists, peer workers, counselors, whatever, they're only as good as they are relatable.
I agree.
How do you guys choose, you know how you guys have programs in the jail?
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys choose those people that come in and do this for you?
That's a good question. I don't go down to that molecular level of how that stuff's chosen. Chief Davis runs our jail, and he would be able to answer probably
make me a
that
reference?
question. Yeah. Well, again, he runs more of that stuff on like the day-to-day operation. But even just recently, I asked to have them send me all the different programs we're running in the jail, because that always comes up, right? What are the programs that you're running in the jail, between chemical dependency? But there were some that we had to also make tough decisions and suspend. Like recently, we had to suspend our electronic home monitoring program, because what they ended up doing is that, and this to me is just, people. Life is a bunch of rocks, and the water flows between them in the path of least resistance, I should say, right? So we found out that the courts have been allowing private EHM, and private EHM is more expensive. They only monitor the inmates Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And so people found that out pretty quick. And so why would you go through a county EHM where we have 4 corrections deputies monitoring people 24 hours a day and reporting violations for pickup, when you could pay a little bit more and have less oversight? And so what that did is it just completely wiped out the number of people that we had on EHM. We were down to 2. So we had 4 corrections deputies, and I already told you how bad it was for each bodies monitoring 2 people in the whole county. And so I'm like, well, let them ride out their sentence so that they can continue to do their EHM. But we're not taking any more until we actually have an assurance that this program is something the courts want to use. And so right now it's suspended so that we could bring those 4 bodies back in. So people are just doing private EHM.
Another thing that popped up when you were talking about the DARE stuff, right, was, so do you think that a non-profit organization could come up with a program to teach in schools?
Probably
Is that
something.
what you're saying, basically?
Probably something a little bit better. Now, this conversation is going to have more to do with the nonprofit and the school board than me, right? Because people elect me to conduct law enforcement business. People elect school board members to decide what gets taught.
Do you guys ever talk about this, like in your meetings and stuff, like about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this has been more of the lane of Katie, as she's the head person on the opioid task force. So she is the one who recommended, the vending machine, and we're like, perfect, we'll go get funding for that, and we will fill that thing up. So she kind of helps with more of that stuff, but I sit and listen. I do more listening in those conversations than anything else, just because, as the sheriff, I may be influential, but I still have a lane. I still have a lane, and so my big piece of input for that conversation was more directed at the, don't let friends smoke things they don't know what's inside of them, right? That's the biggest issue that we're seeing right now is that people are lacing fentanyl and all sorts of different stuff, and then people think that they're smoking weed or, that they're using heroin, for instance, and they're dying. And they're dying.
It's so sad.
And we can't even bring them back. The Narcan's not working.
Which leads me to this question, comes from the Facebook post. Is Shani says, what does he see as a positive toward the addiction world we are in now and the homeless camps? And does he feel our state is enabling them instead of providing the help they need?
Ooh.
Yeah, when I seen that on the
What
Facebook,
do I feel
like,
is a positive towards... Well, first of all, I will say I think that the tiny home village stuff has been extremely positive in our community. Is it Quixote Village here, right downtown, off of...
Is it right when you get off the exit?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I just recently noticed that. That's funny. When I was getting off the exit, I looked over and I'm like, oh, that's funny.
And isn't that the point?
Yeah.
Isn't it the point to have a place where we can get people housed where you don't even know it exists because it's so
like
quiet? There's one in Tumwater, too.
Oh, there is?
There's one in Tumwater back behind
I just never
SPSCC.
even heard about it.
And no one knows about them.
Yeah,
because
the organization I work for, actually one of our housing specialists, there's some members that have recently enrolled, and they reported back that the case manager on site is amazing.
Yes,
is helping these people with their medical, get their social security, get their life in track. Not only just sticking them in the house and turning their back. There's a case manager on site.
There's also one on College Street in Lacey. No one knows about these.
Is it like, so I saw one in California, right? And it was like probably on TikTok or something I saw. But it like showed how they ran it in it. They ran like they served 3 meals a day. They had like a main. So is that how these are too?
I'm not sure if that's how these ones are specifically ran. These ones basically they have tiny homes and then there's rules inside their community. And it's a place. It's also an easy place too, I think, for a lot of the check-ins. So some of these people are on DOC probation and stuff, but one DOC officer can just walk the neighborhood and be like, okay, everyone's doing good, right? But again, like I think the tiny home thing has been a huge success, and especially when so many people are on the brink of falling into poverty. There's the home. As someone who grew up homeless at one point, like we're not all the same, right? We're not all this. Like there is
right. We don't all love it or like it or
rock bottom pushing a shopping cart to your tent homeless, and then there's also we're on the run from a domestic abuser and we're living in a van until there's room in the shelter homeless, and then there's I'm couch surfing right on the brink of being kicked out homeless. And then there's I'm 6 months behind rent homeless. Like there's different phases.
Entry actually has all those different levels of.
There's different levels, and it's not all the same. And not everyone who's experiencing tough times and homelessness is a vagrant, right? Who's just out here to cause trouble and steal from Michaels, right? And so they all kind of get lumped into the same box.
We were just talking about that the other day.
But I think the tiny home stuff is a huge success. As far as do I think that the state of Washington encourages homelessness? Not on purpose. I think that sometimes because of how many resources we throw at things, if you're a homeless person in North Dakota, first of all, it's probably too cold to be homeless there. And secondly, you might be looking at a state like Washington where maybe you have a better chance of becoming successful. Maybe North Dakota doesn't have all the resources and they're not willing to throw all that stuff and actually help people out. Maybe they just leave you out in the cold snow.
There was a certain point in time where I heard that people were actually coming here. Homeless people were actually coming to our state because
I can guarantee you they are.
And we talked in our meeting about how some states will create their numbers by literally vanning them to the next state over.
Is there still tent
and dropping them off?
Is there still what?
Tent City downtown? By the bus station?
Kind of, yeah. It's actually gone down because what you see with the homeless population in this area, right, is that they go where they're not going to be bothered. Truly, right? They're human beings, so they go where they're not going to be bothered.
And that's not necessarily... I don't understand the side of the store thing. Or like the just right off of the main road in the bushes. Like, why not go? Why not find a big ass field in the woods and go like...
If I had to guess, this is just my guess. If you're homeless, you're probably depleted of a lot of different things that you need. And it probably, thinking of myself as a truly like, I'm at the rock bottom pushing a shopping cart homelessness, I probably wouldn't go too far from the shelter and too far from the food bank where I can get my daily caloric intake and all those kinds of things. So that would be my guess. My guess would be that I would make it, 3 blocks down the street, find a dry place to lay down, and then wake up and do it all again tomorrow. But they really truly, I think, for the most part, I mean, you got a small percentage that don't, but I think for the most part they go where they think that they're not going to come in contact with the police all the time, because the walking patrol downtown is constantly going around and talking to these guys like, hey man, like it's time to get up, the store's about to open, right? And you can't just lay down in front of the door, you're blocking the door kind of thing. But that's why you also see them float between jurisdictions. So if you notice, Lacey has almost no homeless people on their side of I-5. They completely wiped that whole thing out. A lot of them were rehoused. A lot of them just decided they were tired of being contacted by Lacey police, and they realized that they go across the freeway.
The Hobby Lobby?
The other side of Hobby Lobby.
Because I'm like,
where the park is.
And see, that's the thing. Explain that, because when we had our meeting, you explained something to me, and I was just like, that's really interesting. And that jurisdiction of that one area right there, when you're saying, like, I forget what you were saying, but you're saying, like, in one little juxtaposition, it's like State Patrol, Lacey, Thurston County.
Yeah, so
all have a jurisdiction.
At Pacific and Slater, that's Lacey Police Department, and they go all the way to I-5 there. And then there's that
like
park.
by Ross, you mean?
Yep. And there's that further down where like Target, okay. Fred Meyer, that area. And if you go just north there, there's a little park that runs along like 6th Avenue, 3rd Avenue, that kind of area. And it's the I-5 park. And there's a little park there, and it kind of goes up against I-5. That's all Lacey. Now, just on the other side of that is State Patrol. State Patrol runs everything on the freeway, and they have, I think, a 30 or 50 foot, basically, right away that's all State Patrol property. North of that, when you get to Hobby Lobby, right, and Subway, I think, is right there, that is Olympia Police Department. And then when you get to Slater and 15th, Northeast, it's Thurston County. You're now in my jurisdiction. So in less than, half a mile, 1 mile,
direction,
you've gone through 4 different jurisdictions as far as Lacey, State Patrol, Olympia, Thurston County Sheriff's Office. And so what you see with the homeless population is they move around based on how often they get contacted by police for the most part, because people call and complain. So in Lacey, they all called to complain. Lacey went out there, kept rehousing, kept contacting them, and they realized that if they go right across the street to where the Hobby Lobby encampment is, no one bothered them, which is why it got so big.
And my thing too is it's like, as a mother and a mother with small children right now, but even once they become teenagers, I'll still be fearful of things, because it's not that the homeless people are always bothersome, but the ones that mental health, it's a fear. It's like, it creates a fear,
it can be scary when a dude's yelling at himself carrying a stick down the street.
Going in and out of a store with your kids, or...
and I don't think that's a bad thing to admit. That sometimes you're like, okay, right? As a deputy, I was like, if that dude doesn't bother anyone, I'm not going to get contacting him. Because there's no reason I'm going to go contact the dude who's screaming at himself and he's armed with a stick.
Yeah.
Right? What am I going to cause a confrontation for?
Yeah.
I don't need that in my life. Right? But then they start throwing rocks in the roadway and start hitting people's cars, and you're like, well, now we got to go out here and bring a less lethal 40 and all these other things to try and make sure that we don't have to get to that level of force. And you can see in this area, we do have a large homeless population. You can see when I go out on calls with Olympia, Lacey, our county guys, State Patrol, like when it's a mentally ill person, you can see like the like we just don't want to. And we find any reason not to, honestly. Because there's nothing worse in the news than police officer shoots mentally ill person. There's nothing worse. I'll challenge you to find something worse than someone who doesn't know what they're doing getting killed by the government.
I haven't seen it down here myself, but I've seen it in Seattle a lot. It's like people are just freely smoking drugs in the streets.
I see that in Seattle all the time.
That is also, I know it's not like an issue for you because it's not your county, and I haven't seen it down here personally happening.
We're fortunate in that regard.
But like, is that a thing? Is that illegal for now?
Now it is now. It's legal now. That was the Blake decision for us. And we saw a lot of that. We saw a lot of people smoking,
Because again, it's like you're walking with your kids and someone's just blowing heroin smoke in their face or crack smoke like that.
Yeah. The Blake decision turned everything upside down.
I thought that was just on because I didn't know it was just to be. I didn't think it was like, you can legally smoke.
We don't have a public
it was just like
a public heroin use. It was always possession of heroin, right? So we don't. Washington State doesn't have a law that says it's illegal to use heroin in the streets. It says it's illegal to possess heroin,
But
which
they
covers
always
that.
had a freaking, what's it called? The stuff that you use, paraphernalia. That was a charge.
Yes, but here's what happened, right? In society, when something happens, there's usually all these organizations that decide whether or not it's their problem. And if you get something where every organization down the chain says it's not our problem, it lands in the laps of police officers, firefighters, medics, coroners. That's just how our society works, right? We kind of catch the last of it. So when drugs became, and you saw this, so in 2021, 2 huge changes hit for police reform. The first thing was that, the 2021 changes, the big one was that the law actually stated that if the person exhibited signs of mental illness and there wasn't a crime, that police officers were to leave the scene and not go. So what you saw with that was we said, oh, thank God. I am tired of going to mentally ill calls, okay? And it's always stressful and trying to deal with that. Thank God. And mental illness stuff blew up. People freaked out. Firefighters were on scene with violent mentally ill people by themselves. People were calling in saying that my son's having a schizophrenic breakdown.
You created a force, right, for that?
And we did, yes.
Mental.
So does Olympia and Lacey. And so
That's how they call those people.
they're our co-responders. Yeah, our mental health co-responders. But we didn't have those at the time.
Right.
And so everything blew up, and it took the legislator a matter of months to fix that because they realized that there is no alternative to police right now for mental health response as a primary. This person is violent, swinging an axe and needs to be taken into custody for their own well-being and for the safety of others. There's no one else because the DCRs and the mental health professionals are not going to see that person without a police officer present. Right. They're not going to go out there, get their head lopped off, right, in the name of public safety without a way to defend themselves or be protected. So when you saw that thing with mental health, police officers basically were like, it's not our problem. Well, who do we call? I don't know. The state hasn't got that far. And you saw the complete demise of, in that short amount of time, people were helpless and didn't know what to do. They quickly reversed that, and we started going back to those calls. Shortly after, we created our SCOUT team, which is our mental health co-responder team. So we actually have people, it's half peers and half mental health professionals going out into the community. Now, you saw the exact same thing with drugs, right? In 2022, the Blake decision came down, and the Supreme Court basically ruled on the side of the law as written wasn't lawful. So for the last couple of years, drugs were basically, I think it was a misdemeanor on your 3rd referral to the prosecutor's office. But we didn't have a way to keep track of that. So instead what happened is the least path of resistance, law enforcement across the state were like, drugs aren't our problem anymore. Unless you're dealing, right? We still have a narcotics task force for that. But if you're just possessing drugs, smoking it in the street, all that kind of stuff, we'll drive right by. Right? Because there's so much on our plate all the time in law enforcement that when you take something off, we don't even bat an eye. We don't bat an eye. We're like, that is now a problem for the Opioid task force to figure out, right? That is a job for everyone else to figure out. It's not our problem. They just created the Blake fix, so drugs are now legal again, or illegal again, I should say. So now law enforcement's back in the game of, why do you have drugs on you, right? And so I do like the new law, though. There was a lot of back and forth about should it be a misdemeanor or a gross misdemeanor. I didn't honestly care. I just cared that the funding was there for rehabilitation because it's a rehabilitation first law. It talks about, you need to divert people into the lead. Now, what that looks like for us, right, is that's for the courts to do. So you can still be arrested for drugs. And at that point, we basically put in our report like this person needs to go into the lead program. And then the PA, defense, and the courts all work on getting that person into rehab, basically. And there's funding behind it, too. Millions and millions of dollars in funding for rehabilitation. And so I kind of take the two-prong approach, right? I would like to see less harsh penalties for drug users and people who are in simple possession. And I would like to see more funding and more help to help my department combat dealers and people who are bringing it up through the I-5 corridor. And so that's kind of been my only beef with the whole opioid thing in this county is the county is very, very focused right now on, more rehab centers, and that's all great. But if you have an endless supply and no one's there to even try to mitigate the supply of narcotics in this county, people are going to have it's always going to be in their face. It's always going to be an opportunity. And kind of the unfortunate part right now is that Thurston County is the only agency we have 2 narcotics detectives for 300,000 people. We're the only ones who supply the detectives in this county, aside from State Patrol provides, I think, one, and we have one from, I think, we have a couple feds. But other than that, all right, like, we spend a lot of our time in the cities doing drug cases and taking down people who have pounds and pounds of fentanyl. And we don't have any help from the cities right now because of staffing is low and all these other things. So it's a challenge. It's a two-pronged sword for me, though. You can't focus on just one. You can't just hammer people, and you can't just focus on rehabilitation. There has to be a little bit of balance there.
Yeah, I saw something a long time ago too, like a few years ago, where they were talking about building. I can't remember. It was in an old either hospital or something of the larger like building, and they were talking about making it like a 4-story tier rehabilitation center, but it's locked down. So it's like you're going to jail, but you're going to jail because you're in possession and you're an addict and you need help. So you're going here to the center, but you're on lockdown and you can't leave. It's like you're in jail, but instead you're getting help as you're doing your time.
Right.
So yeah, and I thought that would have been amazing.
You actually.
But who pays for that stuff? Who pays for rehabilitation? Who pays for tiny home in camp?
Taxpayers.
Yep.
We do.
Yeah. The city of Olympia has paid for quite a few. Tumwater's got one. I think that's Tumwater. It's either Tumwater or Olympia, right up there behind South Puget Sound. Lacey's got one. And again, like the most successful tiny homes, no one knows that they even exist. You can't even tell they're there. No one knows.
No, because if you highlight that, then you can't really justify complaining about what's not working. Because again, we're from a cancel culture society where we'll focus on the 10 and not the 90. Like this thing is going really, really good.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate.
You don't hear about it.
I think they're great.
You don't hear about it.
I think it's a great use of taxpayer money because you can't complain about the tents and the complaint that we're spending money to try and get rid of the tents.
Do they have regulations as far as like, are they viewing them and stuff like that? Do they
I believe
focus
so.
on that yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the people there are on DOC. They're currently seeking mental health treatment, all these different things. So, yeah, it's all part of a huge comprehensive program. But they're doing things there to ensure that there's still rules, and I think there's structure. There's
not that
there's
like,
expectations.
hey, you're an addict, so you just don't deserve a tiny home because you.
Well, no, a lot of it's
not
based on
that,
harm
but
reduction.
I'm just saying,
But
like,
how does
it
the
would give them
days in play
incentive.
into all that with the tiny homes? Is that like a transitional housing that they go through? I know that there's
I'm not
starting
really sure
to build
yet.
it.
I'm not really
But
sure yet.
how does that all play in?
Days
The days in.
Oh,
The days
yeah,
in,
yeah.
it's not. It's no
Yeah.
longer privately owned. It's owned by the city now. And
Right, I heard.
when I was living there, my biggest thing was there's no resources here. Like, it would be nice to have a certified peer counselor on premises at all times. Things like that. Those are things that I brought up to the people that I was engaged with while I was living there in a bad situation.
Yeah.
And now I see that the city has kind of overtaken that. And then working in peer services, I told them my beef with the whole days in situation. And so
Yeah.
just wondering, is that like a first place that they go and then they get put into these tiny homes?
I
Or
do not know.
do we have a program set up for that to be
I
like
don't
a
know.
path to be?
I have no idea what's gone into the day's end. I just know that they're moving a lot of people from the Hobby Lobby area.
Right, that's kind of what I was
there.
assuming.
But I think the last thing I remember hearing it being called was like a long-term transitional
Okay.
housing kind of thing. So
Yeah, which
So
could be
wherever
indefinite.
it looks like after
But you
that.
had a really good, kind of a long-winded question
A little
on
bit.
Facebook. It actually is kind of what incentivized me to invite her
yeah,
today because Kalvin had some family issues to deal with. That's why he's not here. I don't know why he keeps missing the good ones. He missed the AWACS. And we were really excited the first time you were scheduled.
I know,
you
we were
you had
ready.
family stuff.
I know.
Yeah, and then Josh also was going to be here. Josh Smith.
Yes.
And what's funny is when I had asked him to come the first time, he sends me a picture of you and him and his wife, and he's like, "Yeah, hell yeah, I want to go."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he just
He's a
called
good
out.
dude.
Yeah, he just
He's
called
a really
right
good
before. So he's actually working with me too. He wants to be a part of the board of the Pursue It If You Want It Foundation. So I'm thinking 2024. This is something that's going to be a stamp in the
We
community.
need more of it.
Yeah. But do you remember? I mean, I could probably look it up, but I put my phone on like
My phone's all the way over
do
there.
not disturb.
Our while they're looking that up, our community makes the decision on the sheriff. So, and this is something that I've been like bringing up more and more on, not necessarily political things, but just like us being the voice for ourselves and our future. Because I think a lot of us just sit back and we like say things, or we make a video and we post it on TikTok or on Facebook, and we don't actually do anything about it. And
there's a lot of frustration going on.
It showed a lot that you got elected. I think for a lot of people, it gave hope for a lot of things. And
one thing I've definitely felt like certainly since I got elected, but I started realizing it before I got elected when I was looking up, is that the number one thing an elected official has to be is a dealer of hope. If you're not going to deal hope as an elected official,
we're laughing because he had this huge post about that.
My post was your neighborhood hope dealer.
Yeah, seriously, you have to. You have to be a dealer of hope. Because I worked through a period of time where police reform was rampant, especially in this state, and morale got really, really low. The year that the police reform laws hit in 2021, we lost, from 2021 to 2022, we lost more than 20 deputies.
Is that when all the BLM stuff was going on?
Yeah, it was right when George Floyd got murdered. And then here in Washington State, they were like, you know what? We're going after all this stuff that didn't really have anything to do with the murder of George Floyd, but they were just like, you could tell there's a lot of frustration on that end, right? There's a lot of things we've been wanting to change for a while, and we're doing it now. And so those things all changed. Morale was hit hard, and the worst thing of all was looking up and seeing the exact same poor morale at the top. Like, your department, your agency, your county, your state cannot survive that. I mean, can you imagine? Whether or not people like Governor Inslee or not, can you imagine if, homelessness was bad and all the other things, and he just came to work and was like, it sucks here right now, I don't know what to tell you. Right? He'd be burned to the stake by everyone. Democrats, Republicans, independents. The one thing you cannot have is a leader who visibly gives up. And every night I go to bed, I'm like, man, this is tough. There's a lot of really critical issues going on in the county. My jail is significantly understaffed. My patrol division is significantly understaffed. I got 7 deputies working for 150,000 people every single night, and I'm like, man, it's overwhelming. But then at some point, right, you get elected to do this job, you got to pick yourself up and be a dealer of hope and explain to people, like, here's the method forward. Here's how we're going to fix this. And then I think the caveat to that is to also then accept feedback on your way through it, right?
Yeah.
Like, here's how we're moving through it.
Take your time to actually answer the people they want to hear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here's how we're moving through it. But then you come to me and you're like, what about this? Ooh, that's how we're moving through it, right? Like, you have to be adaptive. You have to, because there's things that I got in office and I'm like, this is how we're going to do it. And then my team and I got together and we got feedback and we're like, ooh, we should tweak this a little bit, right?
Did you have a lot of pushback from your elder coworkers?
No, not really.
No?
I mean,
That's good.
My age definitely played a part in my campaign and now everything else, right? Too young, too inexperienced, all these other things. But, my whole thing for me, aside from my undersheriff position, one of the things that drove me through my campaign was that I picked my team, because I get to appoint a team of undersheriff, 4 chiefs, and an aide. And I was able to pick those people. I picked them long before I even announced. I was like, you know what? If I was going to run for sheriff, this is who I would like. And I ended up in a lot of ways running for them because I knew how much good work they do for the county. So, you have to find those motivating
Here's your question.
My 4-paragraph question.
Here we go. All right.
So what I put was, how can peer services and law enforcement work together to support community members in all encounters? Are there any services that you would like peer workers involved in, and how does that look for the future?
So we team up with Olympic Health and Recovery.
Okay.
That's who we use. And that's who we use for both, I think they run the LEAD program, if I'm not mistaken. And then they also, we contract out their services for our co-responders. So our scout team is made up of those. We've got some mental health professionals and we've got some on the peer side. To me, that's exactly how we do it. Even though they're a contracted service through the sheriff's office, they have TCSO polo uniforms.
Okay.
They have police radios. They have access to our dispatch system. They have little laptops in their cars, just like we do. And they are actually listening to 911 calls and going. To me, I think where the peer support model fails is when it's not close enough to the tip of the spear. If you're not actually out there intercepting people at their lowest point, which is usually the 911 call, then everything else is like it's referral based, right? And I'm not here to talk badly about referral based programs, but it seems like it's not quick enough, right?
It's not.
And the other thing we've seen too, like our undercover narcotics task force team, they try, obviously they have informants and things like this, but they try to get those people into treatment, because sometimes you get people, and this is what I've seen a lot, right? Right now, right this second, I'm ready to go into rehab. And then they have seen people, they've driven people to the rehab centers, and while they're filling out the amount of time it took for them to fill out a clipboard, they were like, no, I don't want to do this. I'm done. I'm leaving.
They start getting sick.
They start getting sick. They get cold feet, right? Literally, they get cold feet, and they're like, I can't do this. And so when you think about that is the time frame to maybe get someone who's addicted to narcotics into treatment, the referral-based program is like, it's basically, it may as well be 100 years too late by the time it hits people. So to me, the biggest thing that can happen is the expansion of the scout team. That's my goal. This year, we are running a public safety tax ballot measure, 0.2% of the sales tax increase to provide 28 more patrol deputies, and then also increase our contracted services for scout so that we have more deputies and more co-responders on the street.
Okay, I think I asked you this at our business meeting before, but where can we as peers go to receive like free de-escalation training, for example? Or could we attend them
or even
with
community
you guys?
members
Like
in
if
general?
you
Not
guys,
even just,
you know, if you got some
peers.
deputies and say you only got 5 deputies, and hey, invite 5 peers, and now you got a class of 10 doing the same de-escalation, and now not only are we getting the same de-escalation training for eventually being on one of these scout teams, but also we're building a rapport with the guys who are responding. So now he might feel more comfortable calling me directly.
Yeah.
Like, hey, B, I'm out here with so-and-so. Like, I don't want to arrest him. Can you get out here as a peer?
Or even as
And you can develop more of that relationships if we're doing more trainings together that benefit the community.
I bet that's something that we could tag team with like Olympic Health and Recovery.
Right.
The president of the board of the Pursuit Foundation that we're working on works for them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so
I'd be willing to bet that's something we can probably put on with Olympic Health and Recovery.
Well, and the other side of that is too, like, even if you're just in the community and you have numerous people already trained, if they see law enforcement going through something and they have that training, they can just step in and like offer that support in whatever way that looks, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm a peer. I have
right.
De-escalation
They have some sort of
training,
credentials or something.
You know what I mean? Something like that, and maybe an environment where they're like, all right, come on. Let me
that'll be the tricky part, right? Is that so even the number one thing for us, and this is where it becomes a high liability piece of work for law enforcement, is that we cannot introduce anyone into a scenario where they're likely to get hurt.
Right.
So I think that's going to be the critical piece, right? Is like the classic, you know, the guy swinging the machete around. Unfortunately, we can't bring a peer into that scenario anyways, right? Those are the scenarios where we can't have
a pedestrian, essentially.
We can't have any. We don't even have our own paid employees who are part of the scout team going in on those. You know, they're sitting down the street, down the block, ready to come in if things can quiet down, and maybe we can get the guy to drop the sword, right? But yeah, I think that's something that we can at least work on the training piece right now and figure out how that would look, and then start to incorporate it. But I don't see any of this model slowing down.
The other side of it, where some deputies go through like Recovery Coach Academy, where they're getting kind of the same coach. You know, the training's a 5-day, 40-hour, just 1 week, and where I work, they host one every month and a half or so. You know, now if they came in, and that would kind of close the gap too in that relationship with the peer work in the houses. If they're in these trainings, learning what we learning, you know, the pronoun trainings, the de-escalation that we get taught, the recovery language. Yeah. Like, you know, we don't use the word addicts, for example, or in our field, we don't say clients. We'll say like members of the organization, or just peers, because they're all peers. People. You know, people that we're assisting and helping. I guess my thing is, how do we bridge the gap from like, you're law enforcement, you're over there, and everybody else is over here. But if we have parallel goals, keeping people that are engaged in, you know, consuming drugs or substance use disorder, mental health, out of jail and into our services, we should be closing that gap. We should have, classes, support group, whatever it is that brings us into a controlled setting where we can get to know each other. So you're not looking at me based on what's in your guys' files about me.
Right.
Because you might be the only one that would have a meeting with someone like me and not have that kind of like scrutiny or suspicion, I guess.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And that's, an uphill battle for me. But I don't feel that because, like I said, my actions are in line with my priorities and my mission.
Right.
And so whoever's not a part of it, whoever doesn't believe in it, I don't give a damn. Because if you're not if you're not contributing to the quality of my life or my mission, then your opinion doesn't matter.
Sure. So my not so popular opinion on this would be that training all of our deputies in that, I think, would be too much.
Not all, just...
But I think one of my goals has been to create the HOPE team, the Homeless Outreach and Program Engagement deputies. A 2-deputy team that's assigned specifically with two of our co-responders that ride not together but around to the same stuff. One of the things that's complicated about this, right, is that a lot of the issues that we're bringing up today have more to do with cities than the county. That's part of my challenge, right? I look at Hobby Lobby and I want to get involved, but I'm not even remotely funded to get involved in that, right? I barely have enough deputies to go handle the 911 calls on a nightly basis. But I think a specialized team that deals with that, I could 100% see some of the advanced training going to that. The difficult part, right, for me, and think about this, right? So I've got 7 deputies working at night. I've got a 56-person patrol division. If you're a deputy that normally works out in the Yelm area where I live, I think Yelm has 2 homeless people total. There's hardly
God, they've really freaking grown. I was just out there.
They have grown a lot.
I'm like, damn, what's going on
It's
out
insane
here?
for being a child going out there now. I'm like,
Right.
in the
My
same
daughter's
place.
getting married at a farm in Yelm next Sunday.
And when you look at Yelm, right? What do my Yelm deputies need special training in? Well, it's probably not homeless engagement. That would be kind of a waste of training for them.
But a recovery coach academy isn't homeless engagement.
No, sure, no, I get that. But I'm just saying, what they need more training in is domestic violence. We have a lot of DV stuff out there, out the sticks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially DVs with guns out there. And they also probably need more training in animal stuff. We have a lot of farms out there, so that's where, for me, I try to find specific ways to get people into more specific training based on where they work. Because as a county, we are very diverse. But as cities, we're not really all that diverse. All the cities around here, Lacey, Tumwater, Olympia, all kind of right next to each other. This is all kind of the same for the most. Everyone wants to, we're in Olympia, no, we're in Lacey, but really, it's city life,
this
right?
This is Loving Lacey podcast.
Yeah.
But it's the 360.
It's the whole 360.
It's all of it. It's the whole county.
Whereas my deputies in Rochester and Yelm, they're not really facing a huge homeless issue
What
for the
about
most
drugs
part.
in Yelm?
Do you have drugs? But it's
drugs,
so different, right? Because it's so much more hidden, and that's kind of where that's been my philosophy long before we went through the whole drugs, illegal, legal thing. Was as a law enforcement officer, my focus has been on not necessarily the drugs, but the behavior of the drugs, right? When people use heroin in their own house and they're not putting anyone else in danger, why do I have time for that? It's kind of been my model, honestly, right? That's more for, the social work and rehabilitation. I'm not going to go get a warrant and kick your door down because you've got, half a gram of heroin and you're sleeping on the couch and you're not dying. My focus has been more on this person's using a bunch of methamphetamine and now they're cutting their neighbor's catalytic converter off at 2 in the morning. That's a drug problem that is also bleeding over into the criminal world of victimizing other people. And that has been where my focus has been. So when we talk about all this kind of stuff, I try to make sure that the mission actually matches up with what's actually important and what people truly care about. Because I've seen deputies in my own career field, right, who are pushing the envelope the roommate says he's got a smoking device. And I'm like, you're going to kick his door and get a warrant because he may have a meth pipe in the room.
That's what I'm saying, and that's with the Blake Law thing. So I agreed because I think I didn't fully understand the full law of it, I guess, because I agreed with someone to possess a fucking 10 bag of something or whatever that they're getting high with for themselves because they're an addict should not be illegal. They should not be going to fucking jail and wasting, the cops should not have to be wasting their time. We should not have to be wasting tax dollars to put them in jail and send them to prison because they were smoking and got high themselves and they bought it because they wanted it for themselves.
Like you said, it makes more sense that it's a social problem, because if that leads to neglecting your kids and someone called that's a social problem. That's
right.
Rehabilitation.
Or if they're smoking in the middle of the fucking street and
services.
I'm walking by with my kids and they have to breathe crack smoke or something, that's a problem. Or if there's drug dealers, that's a problem. But I don't think that people possessing their own thing that they want to do for themselves.
I'm more focused about when it becomes criminal and there's a victim more than just themselves. That's where I become more focused on, right? Like, are they neglecting their kids because they're getting high in the bathroom? I mean, we just had the call the other day where ladies in the bathroom of the store getting high with their kids locked in the hot car. And you're like, okay, like that's a crime. That's a crime, and we're going to go deal with that. And that's going to be addressed. I know some people won't like it, but that's going to be addressed first as a criminal offense and secondly as a rehabilitation offense.
Yeah.
But hopefully in the same vein. Our hope is that those things get addressed, right? And maybe you do some jail time, and maybe the kiddo's got to go stay with bio dad or grandma for a little bit. But we're also hoping that maybe we can get you some parenting classes and stuff.
Yeah, to come to a therapeutic court
and maybe come back through the other side as a functioning parent. That's the whole goal. Like, the last thing I want to do is take kids away from their parents. When we get to a point where law enforcement has to take kids from their parents, we've lost the game.
I don't feel like CPS is on the same page.
We've lost the game there. When we get to the point where we have to, it's so bad that the only thing we can do is take the kids away, put them into government care, okay? Because so many things have gone wrong. Like, we've already lost the game.
Or with people with no criminal backgrounds, but they're molesters and weirdos, and
we've lost the game. At that point, there's only victims. No one wins. We are just mitigating the harm at that point. And so the goal, right, is to get to a point where if that does occur, we need to get the kids back with a functioning mom or dad, whoever it is.
Speaking of kids, you never did get to the answers. We keep popping all the stuff at you, but with the metal detectors on schools and stuff like that, like, what would it take? And is that even something that you guys have ever discussed?
Yeah, I have those discussions all the time. I am very grateful that I have 3 fantastic school resource officers in the county, one in Rochester schools, one in Rainier schools, and one in North Thurston public schools. They're all doing a really good job, but I have a lot of concerns about school safety in general. The absolute last thing I want to do is have to have the critical incident where a bunch of kids got killed at school, or we do have some kids that bring guns to school or make threats to bring guns to school and all that stuff.
Right, so that's what my vision is, that every school should have a metal detector at the entryway. And my other vision is that the door should be locked in the daytime. Like, I know my kids' elementary school is not locked at all in the daytime.
Yeah, and that's kind of my concern. Pretty much every elementary school I've gone to, you can walk in, and there's a little check-in clipboard, but
they can walk right in and blast the office.
Yeah, you walk past it if you want.
Hey, what do you...
Yeah.
What are they going to do?
Hey, they're getting shot first.
And so that's a huge concern, and for me, again, another unpopular opinion, but I also think that we should have armed security at every school as well, to deter that. Now, there's a whole lot of things we can do if people are really that uncomfortable, right? We can have that armed security officer have a concealed carry, right? They don't have to have the gun out here.
Uncomfortable when it happens in your state.
You're not going to feel any less uncomfortable if your kid dies at school, and that's just the reality. Washington has done a ton of stuff. They've banned AR-15s from purchase or sale. They've banned high-capacity magazines. There's nothing that the state can do, however, to go get the ones that are already in circulation, off the streets. There's nothing you can do. We don't have enough law enforcement to even do that in a city of Yelm of 10,000 people. We couldn't even get that done. So we, I think, have to accept the fact that for now, the best thing, I think, is prevention. And so I do think a single point of entry is good. Metal detectors, I think that it's a really challenging time because kids don't want to feel like they're going into a war zone when they go to school. They want a safe place. Kids shouldn't have to worry about being shot to death in our schools. But the parents, as adults, we do have to worry about that. That is our responsibility to make sure that all of our kids go home and then go to work or go to school and then come home safe every day. So I am of the opinion if I could get funding to put a security guard right? No one who's going to discipline your kids. No one who is going to go make an arrest.
They're someone there for their presence.
They're just there mostly for a presence, and then also you have someone on scene if things do go badly. You have a first responder already, if you will. Someone who has de-escalation training, first aid training, firearms training, all the defensive tactics, all those things, but they're not actually making arrests.
Okay,
So,
and then I want to clarify, you said they were already putting in place for teachers and school nurses to have Narcan and be trained?
yeah, I believe the nurses are the ones.
Every grade level of school?
As far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we carry, for the same exact reasons, right? We're not expecting anyone necessarily to, it's just in case someone does overdose. Like we carry Narcan as deputies. Same thing. Just want to make sure that
even as a member of the community, like standing at the bus stop, I've had to be in the place to have Narcan and it saved somebody's life. Sylvester Park, same thing. Came running out, I had Narcan, so.
Right.
Yeah, it happened to me.
You never know when it's going to happen.
Crosswalk by Ross, but unfortunately I did not have any, but I recognized and I called, but now I do have it. And I don't know, I guess I've never really looked into or thought about, is it harmful for someone, like a child, to get a hold of that? No, okay, so it's not like it shouldn't be an issue.
You could take Narcan right now and it wouldn't do anything to you.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just didn't want to say it wrong. So
before we wrap this up, favorite restaurant in Thurston County?
Ooh, favorite restaurant in Thurston County. I really like Uptown Lounge in Yelm. I do.
Oh, in Yelm?
Yeah.
Oh, Lounge. Okay.
Uptown Lounge in Yelm. They got good food and they got the movie theater with the reclining seats and the unlimited popcorn.
That's all in like this. That's all one thing.
One building.
Oh
It's a cool venue.
Date night.
It's a great date night.
Unlimited popcorn.
Yeah, for $7. It's like $7 for a popcorn. $12 for a popcorn and a drink, and it's unlimited. You can get as many refills as you want. Which most places, when you go to the movie theater, it's like $13 for a large popcorn.
No, $13 for a water.
And then $7 for every refill. You know. So they do. It's a super cool venue. You can go in there. You can have a couple drinks and then go watch a movie and sober up. So it's definitely a cool little thing.
Yeah, I haven't been to the Yelm Theater for a while.
I go out there quite a bit. They got the reclining seats.
As soon as I get this bracelet
Just
off,
at the Yelm Cinema, right? What you're talking about?
Yep.
But it's just...
Yep. Yeah, they got a little restaurant bar attached to it. So yeah, it's probably my favorite little.
I feel like it's been 15 years since I've been out there.
Yeah.
I was literally just out there a couple
blown up.
times now, but
Has it?
yeah, it's crazy because my aunt and uncle, when I was a kid, they moved to Clear Lake when that neighborhood just was being built.
Clear Lake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
There's a lot of people out there.
big ass house out there, and
Yeah.
and then they had that community pool, but they were like in the beginning of it, so like they gotta pick their whole model and do all that.
Thing.
So then, like, just in the years from like growing up with them out there, and then I used to work out there. You know what's funny? I used to work at YCOM.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm saying I used to work at YCOM. Do you know what that is?
No, I was saying I don't.
You don't?
know what it is.
It's the telephone company for Yelm.
I don't have a home phone, so if that's what you're talking about, I got a home phone. I got a cell phone that I use on the Wi-Fi out there. They actually just put a cell phone tower out.
Yeah, YCOM was the local telephone company for Yelm.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I used to work there.
Wycom. Yeah.
that makes sense.
It does
That
now.
makes sense. Yeah. Nope, never owned a home phone in my entire life. Not my family has, but I was just part of the generation that was like, no, I'm just keeping my cell phone. I was part of that weird generation, right, where they're like, what's your home phone? I'm like, I'll have one. Here's my cell phone number, right? The whole transition, right?
I still remember my childhood phone number from when I was a
Me
kid.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandma had the same one for the longest time.
I do remember my grandma. My grandma has the same home phone number, and I always dial that one. But yeah, it's funny times.
All right, man.
Thanks
been
for having
good.
me.
Oh man,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Appreciate you.
It's been surreal.
Yeah.
Obviously we all had a lot.
Yeah, people have questions. I think that's good. For a long time, law enforcement was really, police business, mind your business, don't worry about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And we failed as an entire profession as a result.
Oh,
of that.
that's what I wanted
People
to bring up.
hate us. They don't know what we do. They think we just sit on the side of the road all day and try to catch people going 5 miles an hour over the speed limit.
Well,
Yeah,
there is this one guy, and he sits at Long Lake all day.
Yeah, and I'm like, whoa. Well, that's not even close to what my day looked like as a deputy, right? And so as a deputy, I was always like, to the administration, like, let's show them what we're doing, because this is not it. And they're getting confused and they're getting frustrated because they think that all we do, right? Like, and there's a syndrome behind it, right? Of like, You drive through and you see all the, let's say you see the tents and you're pissed off and you're like, and then you watch someone run out of Marshall's with a whole box of shoes that they clearly didn't pay for because the manager's screaming behind them, right? And then you're driving down the street and you get pulled over and you're like that is the syndrome of like driving people crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I just watched lawlessness go on. And then for a petty violation, I was just pulled over by the police. And
40 minutes of my life.
Yeah, exactly. And so, there's two things. There's two sides of it, right? There's one is like I'd actually like to show people what we actually do on a daily basis, right?
So is that why you're so active
yes,
on your social media
100%,
page?
right? Like
that's what, because my question was that by design? Because you post a lot. You're funny on there.
Do you post all your stuff?
Yeah.
Someone's doing it for you?
On my page, I post all my stuff.
Yeah, because when you responded to me, I'm not going to lie, I was shocked. I was like, directly? Okay, that's what's up.
I was
like, hell yeah, bro, I'll fucking come see you.
Yeah.
You gotta check out Thurston because I'm like, normally I used to like not be with like the police or anything, just like instant like, I don't know, internal like against the police. I don't know, but then I was like, something had popped up on my thing, and you were on there, and it was actually I remember the specific post that made me add you. It was on the corner of Martin Way.
The dude sitting on top of the sign. His feet was
and
dangling.
you were like just another day something. I can't remember what you said, and I was like, okay.
Crazy day in our county or something. Dude was sitting on top.
Dude was on top of the walking pole.
The walking pole, yeah.
And I was just like, and people would freak out. And they're like, well, you need to be arrested. I'm like, for what? The dude, I mean, like, he didn't damage anything. And as soon as he got up there, he got right back down. I'm just like, oh, that's wild, bro. And you know what? Like, that dude didn't commit a single crime that I know of. He just climbed up there, and he sat up there, and he kind of looked around. And then he got back down and started walking down the street again. And I was just like, like some people, it's just like hardcore parkour. They just got to climb up on stuff and, conquer that little win for their day. I thought it was funny.
Do you have any questions for us? Or for me?
I guess my question, right? Because this is, you say the same thing about me, right? You're like, I can't believe this dude, responded to me. At the same time, I saw your name pop up, and at first I was like, dude, I'm pretty sure I transported you to the jail personally. Like, what do you want with me? What do you want with me? And I know I've contacted you before, too, at Winco.
Oh, that's funny.
Yes.
That's 100%.
And I'm like, what do you guys want with me, right? Like I am like the opposite. I was the law enforcement officer that was like your demise, right? Probably on the worst day of your life, I showed up. And so I guess my question is like, what was the most challenging part? Now, obviously, you guys have completely turned things around, and you're part of contributing members of society. What was the hardest single part of that?
Of turning around?
Of turning your lives around, because you're not who I remember you to be at all.
Yeah.
Last time I saw you, not good. Last time I saw you, I don't think you were good because you were screaming at me. So what was the hardest part of turning all that around? Obviously, I know you went off and I think you went to prison, correct?
Yeah, I went to the fair. I mean, you guys see it. I got a bracelet.
Yep.
I'm almost done. But so I think honestly for me, and it kind of boils down to what I said earlier. Like, if you're not contributing to the quality of my life or backing the decisions that I'm making that are positive, even if it at first was just about my family or like a book I decided I wanted to read, like you be in prison, and guys be like, you reading that shit? Being able to separate myself from giving a fuck about what people thought about what I was doing. Like, even now, when people have seen like, you're about to have the sheriff on your podcast? Like, that's crazy. And it's just like, yeah, but, I just seen Ice Cube on a TikTok, whatever, and he was saying, I'm not scared to have a conversation. I never have been. I've never been scared to talk to someone. I mean, I've never physically been scared of anybody in my old career either.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like people fear conversations. People fear in the world I used to live in, talking to an officer was completely, absolutely out of the picture. Like, you're a rat, even if it had nothing to do with a conversation about a crime.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And just so having this forum where we could talk openly about community things, family, like, and then not only that, show the rest of the community who aren't following you on your page, like, this is Derek Sanders. This is a human being. He's not the guy that's just pulling you over because you're going 5 over.
No. I'm a human first.
Exactly.
And then
And
I'll argue I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a fiance, and then I'm the sheriff.
And you're a father.
That
Yeah, roundabout way.
that little
Yeah.
charge that you're talking about, actually, that little charge, I'm gonna say, because at the time I had like $10 or less worth of drugs on me, is actually what sent me to prison. And because over time of like failing to appear or moving my court date, I got bail jumping.
Yep.
Even though I wasn't really bail jumping.
Sure. Yeah. They still hit you with it.
Yeah. Which that actually became the charge that held the most time for me, bail jumping.
Yep.
But the hardest part for me, other than obviously, because we're talking about the hardest part of like getting to where I am, not the hardest part of getting out. So I'm just gonna say was that things didn't happen fast enough. I didn't have the patience. I wanted to get out and I wanted to make everything happen now, and I wanted to get everything that I needed now. So the hardest part for me was letting things play out and letting time come and like things happen over time. Yeah, I did do.
We're all impatient, and it's part of our society, right? It is the buy now, pay later. It is the instant gratification, and I'm more guilty than maybe all of you combined, right?
Yeah.
The same thing in my work. I want it done now, and I want the improvement now. I want to be staffed now. I want that new K-9 program in the jail done now. I want the DV team up now, and this stuff takes time.
Yeah, because I hadn't had a license in 15 years or something.
Yeah.
So I came out, I got that. I had to get my kids from his mom, their grandma. So I had to work with CPS to do that, and that obviously took way longer than any day is way longer when it's your kids. You know, I wanted them instantly. So it was just the being patient and
being on the inside of that. Let me tell you,
people used to always
that was
say,
a goddamn struggle because like her and my mom had friction.
Yeah, naturally.
And then to me, from my side, the social workers, there was like 7 in like an 18-month period. So like they didn't have the facts right. They weren't reading like the other one's case log, and then there were times where they were literally like playing both sides against the other, and it's like your job is reunification. Like, why are you creating
the drama,
this distance to the point where I'm in the feds and I'm like, you know what? Don't talk to me unless we're all on the Zoom.
Right.
I don't want to have any more meetings with you by yourself.
Nope.
Anytime you email me through this core links, I want you to CC your supervisor, and I'm going to do the same. And from that day forward, everything.
It's funny how when things
and
get
then they
really
start emailing
transparent,
me, oh, we're so glad.
Things improve.
it just took for me to get one. I had one supervisor who heard me and saw me, and that was all I needed. I just needed him and his vouching, and then everything was uphill from there, fast. So, I mean, downhill. Whatever. Anyway.
Easier.
One of the things I hated the most though during that was people always like, do good things and good things will happen. I'm like, oh my God, if I hear that shit one more time. But it is true. It's true. And now I say it to people too.
Yeah.
Well, I think learning patience is part of the whole healing journey too.
And I'm naturally impatient. I'm an Aries.
The one thing I will leave you guys with, and it was the most important lesson I learned, was actually during the campaign. So I was a patrol deputy. Not really community involved, right? Like I said, tired all the time, working a lot of overtime.
How long before?
What's that?
How long were you working before?
I was a deputy for 7 years when I decided to run for sheriff. And then I ran for sheriff against my boss. So very few people run for political office. Even fewer have to do it against someone who holds ultimate hiring, firing, discipline authority over them.
Right.
Most challenging thing I've ever done in my entire life. But I make the decision to do it, not to win, to start a conversation. Kind of like what you're talking about. I'm not afraid to have a conversation. I will drag my own boss to a public forum to make him answer for what we're doing internally. I will. I have no problems whatsoever doing that. So I did. And I ran for office, and things were going terribly. Just terrible, right? I'm 28 years old, and I just broken up with a girlfriend. Like, I'm going through all these different changes. And I'm not raising any money, and if anyone's new to politics, you have to have money to win. So on top of not having money now, I'm feeling the pressure of, well, if I'm actually going to do this, I'm gonna have to put my own money into it. So now I'm pumping all of my savings into my own campaign. Over $10,000 between gas and money for signs and all this other stuff. As grassroots as you can possibly get. I'm going to deputies that I worked with and I'm like, would you support me? And they're like, not publicly, man. Sorry. Hey, would you support me? No, I'm glad that you're running. I think the change needs to occur, but I don't even want to be seen around you right now. Because I don't want them to blackball me for being, hey, how about you? No one, completely cut off. In fact, I even got to a point where I made it a point at about halfway through where I stopped talking to coworkers. Like if it wasn't on a call, I went and sat on the side of the road and waited for the next call or waited for, something to go do on my own. I operated almost entirely on my own for 8 months because it wasn't fair to my coworkers. They weren't wrong, right? Like you're gonna get blackballed if you come out and support me or you're seen, talking about this stuff. And so going through all this, I'm struggling. I actually called some of my friends and my girlfriend at the time up, and I'm like, I think I'm going to drop out. Like, no one cares about this. No one's going to care about this race. It's getting overshadowed, I think, by the county commissioner race. There's some races for state representative at the state level going on. There's a race in Congress down south. And I'm like, this is too much. I'm ready to go back to and I'm going to events all the time, right? So now I'm being a better version of myself because I have an interest now to go out and get invested in the community and learn about who's actually in Thurston. So I'm tired. My average day, I'm going to bed at 5 in the morning when I get off graveyard. I'm waking up at 9. I'm campaigning all day. I'm knocking on doors. I'm handing out literature. And then I'm getting home, eating dinner for the first time, food for the first time, and going back to work at 8 or at 6 p.m. and work until 5 a.m. the next day. And I'm tired and I'm just maxed out. I think I probably have long-term kidney failure from how many Red Bulls I had during that time. And so I'm going through all this and I'm telling my buddies, I'm like, I think I'm just going to drop out. And I'll never forget one of my friends, he's actually a police officer with Lacey. He's like, stick it out through the primary and stop going to everything. Go to the stuff that sounds fun, right? Like campaigning doesn't have to suck. And this guy, he's a young guy, no experience in politics. He's like, just go to the stuff that sounds fun. And I'm like, all right, man, I'll just take it easy for now. And so I start going to stuff, and instead of being focused on winning a campaign, I just went out and hung out with people. And they're like, well, who are you? And I'd be like, my name's Derek. Not, my name is Deputy Sanders, I'm running for Thurston County Sheriff, you should vote for me, I'm just Derek. And then we'd hang out for a while at these events, and then afterwards they'd be like, so what brought you out here? And I'm like, I'm running for sheriff, have a good day. And I reversed it all, right? I became a person first and a candidate second instead of how I was running things. And then what changed my absolute life is I was on the way to, I had very few endorsements. I think I'd raised $2,000 so far, which is nothing in the world of politics for a countywide race. No. I'm on my way to Tumwater Fire Department. I'd already talked to my buddy who kind of linked us up, and he's like, yeah, you can go talk to them, but they've never endorsed a sheriff, and they already said they won't. And I'm like, okay, good, sounds good, I can't wait. I'm driving over there, and I'm like, you know what? This whole time I've cared so much about what my coworkers think. I was running for the deputies, right? I want to make this a better place to work. And I cared so much about what my coworkers thought of me and whether or not, and the jail didn't like me. They endorsed my opponent. And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? I'm just like, this is a mess. It's a total fucking mess. And I'm going through all this, and on the way to this Tumwater Firefighter Union on like a Tuesday night, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to start campaigning on what I think is important to the community based on my values and what I think people will be receptive to. I'm just going to try to align myself with what is best for Thurston County. And I went in there and I gave them the best speech I've probably ever given to date. I gave them this speech, and they asked me questions, right? And I was just like, I got an answer for you. Like, I had an answer for everything by changing the way that I was thinking about it, right? And it kind of aligns with what you're talking about a little bit. And I drive away from that, and I'm not feeling any better about the campaign. I'm just feeling better about myself, right? That, like, at least I had a good speech. I'm driving away, and maybe 3 minutes later, the president calls me. He's like, we've endorsed you. How much money do you need? And I'm just like, what? Why? Like, why are you endorsing me, right? No one else is endorsing me. And that was like, I never looked back. I still have not looked back since that day. And he was like, dude, you're young, but like, we can see the resiliency. inside you, and that's what elected leaders need. And so from that day, I never turned around. 3 weeks later was the primary. I won by 5%. Couldn't believe that. And then, I got placed under investigation that night by my boss for winning the primary election. And then that pissed me off even more, right? Because Michael Jordan and I have almost nothing in common. He's a very athletic, beautiful man, and I'm just a dude here in Thurston County. But one thing that Michael Jordan and I do have in common after watching his documentary is that I'm self-motivated. But if you give me a reason, I'll definitely bury you. I will do everything in my power. I will not stop. And so from August 1st until November 7th, I buried my opponent in the ground with positivity, and I'm gonna beat you so bad. I don't want to see you again. You're gonna go off into an abyss, and that's how I felt about it. Right? I was so motivated to win, but those things all piled on. It was the best lesson I've ever learned because I stopped caring about people who didn't have anything positive to say about the direction I was going, even though I knew it was the right thing.
Let me tell you something, man. We really are. We have more commonalities than not. You know what I'm saying? Like everything you described is what I'm doing now. Like I came here after sleeping from a graveyard shift. I'm working 40 hours. The people that were endorsing me in my old life, like they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And one thing that motivated me to do and continue doing what I'm doing was twofold like you. I read the prosecutor's letter to my federal judge just 2 weeks ago. And I read that and I'm like, this is really what this person in this high office in this Thurston County thought about me at this time. And a lot of it was emotional. This was an unprofessional, like even the federal judge had spoke on it. I'm not going to say her name. So from that to doing everything I'm doing, and then when I got invited to the board, it's somebody who's actually running for commissioner, heard my vision, and was like, out of nowhere, just in matter-of-fact conversation, I'm like, yeah, I've been thinking about, taking this pursuit, if you want a thing, to a nonprofit, this is what I want to do. And she was like, I'll endorse you. I will sponsor your 501c3. And just tell me when. And the money's sitting there now. She did that. She kept her word, like, you know what I mean? And so, like you, it's like, now I'm not looking back.
Right.
Now it's like, there's all these people expecting this thing to happen, and they're behind it.
Yep.
And we've been working on mission statements and bylaws and things like that. And just having these type of connections, I feel like 2024 is going to be, a big year for peer work and reentry. Yep. I'm hoping to be that spearhead on reentry that people aren't getting, because people, like I was saying, it's like a unicorn.
Yeah.
People hear about these things, and when we're locked up, we hear about it, then we get out and we can't find it, and then they go back.
Or it's a waiting.
Yeah.
Like you said with the rehab thing, it's like a list.
We don't have time for lists.
Well, now it's fucking the middle of winter and my kids are freezing to death and I'm on the waiting list.
I'm on the waiting list.
Well, it's the same thing with mental health facilities too, like reentry from mental health facilities. Like it's just constant cycle.
Yeah.
They get out 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, a week later, 3 days later, they're back in there.
Right.
And it's how much money are we spending on Medicaid, Medicare for these people to be consistently living in the mental hospital
through with no expectation of actually rehabilitating.
Right, and there's no support. There's no support when you get out into the community.
There's no housing
besides peer services now, which is a huge thing for me. Like that's something I've said. Being a mental health patient, this needs to be available when you get out.
Right. What's the mental hospital that we have?
Western State.
Yes.
It's being shut down.
I was just going to ask.
It should have been shut down 30 years ago.
It's like it's a whole different thing they got going. They have like a school over there in that same area, but the actual mental health aspect of it, it's being gutted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. But,
the last thing I'll say is that
is it?
Yeah.
This has been good.
It's the former sheriff's not a bad guy. I don't think he's a bad guy whatsoever. I think that he served his time and everything. And the prosecutor that you're talking about probably isn't a bad person either. These people that lit fires in us. It's just that they served a purpose for us is all. That's how I look at it, right? I don't look at that sheriff as like, he's the worst dude in the world, and because of him, I almost left Thurston, and I had to beat him to get him out of here. No, it's just that he served a purpose for my life to light a fire and take me to a level that I never imagined reaching in 30 years, let alone at the age of 30 years old. And I think it's the same thing for your prosecutor, right? Is your prosecutor, they wrote that letter, are they a bad person, or were they designed in your life to give you that fire, to actually turn your life around and give you the fuel that you needed to go do something else? Because what I love, the thing I love most about life is that the people that just kind of walk around and do nothing don't motivate anyone else. So that prosecutor took time out of their day to write a letter that pissed you off and shot you off into a completely different direction, right? But do you think that you would have had as much fire in your belly to go actually do that stuff if they hadn't made you a little mad and called you out? I love that.
I also have a funny...
They called out a little bit, right?
Judge Schaller was my drug court judge, right?
Yeah.
And I was sitting in jail with all these people, and they're like, oh yeah, I've had 20 chances, and I'm seeing all these people come in on their little 3-day sanctions and stuff, and I'm like, I had one dirty way in the beginning, and she dropped my drug. I had CDP, and then I got sent to prison. So anyway, she was the one who sent me to prison. She yelled at me, with my mom in the courtroom and everything, right? And I had this huge letter I wrote about, my kids and about how I chose drug court for a reason because I was ready to be sober. I just didn't have the tools in me to do it, blah, blah, blah. She wasn't trying to hear it. She did not. She was like, you, blah, blah, blah. So she sentenced me, right? I think my sentence was 55 months or something.
Yeah.
And again, this is for that simple... less than $10 possession.
Started at Winko.
That was the demise of your...
I pulled up.
You did
guys
pull
were
up.
there. And I ran up on you guys what the fuck is going on?
That's right.
That's my car.
I forgot about
that.
that.
That's my wife.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So, anyways, so
Full turnaround.
she quit the drug court.
Yes.
And it was a family judge. When I got out of prison,
She's a family court now.
she was and I was I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, she does not like me. I'm like, this is just all gonna go so bad. But she was actually advocating for me, and she went hard for me, and she granted me, and then they had a reunification celebration at the Children's Museum, and
Sophie Foundation.
Yeah, I saw her for the first time. And it's just
as a board member, I attended.
When she sentenced me, I am a firm believer in everything happens for a reason, right? And now look at me, But at the time, of course, I'm like, I'll spit on her. If I see her in person, I'll fucking
cannot see it at the time. I was so pissed off that John put me under investigation, and I couldn't see it at the time. But I'm like, that was the fire that ensured that I was going to get where I needed to go.
Yeah.
Because again, self-motivated, but just give me a reason.
Yeah.
Give me a reason to paint you as the person I have to be. And,
that was when I was going through all my shit, too. They kept telling me the stigma.
People.
The stigma. These people never survive. These parents never,
They never make it around.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing it. And I'll do everything extra just in case. Matter of fact, just tell me every single program that you guys have, and I'm going to take it just to take it.
all of them.
So then you can't tell me that I need to take another one.
Right. Yeah. That, to me, is it's the difference of people that make it to that next tier. Yeah. Right. It's truly what pushes people beyond their actual capability. Because I'm I don't have any formal training. I don't have any of that stuff. I never took a speech class. I never took a social media class. I went to CJTC. I didn't get much extra training, right? Because we didn't have money for it. So really, I am a patrol deputy. That is who's running this county right now. A patrol deputy on common sense. That's all there is to it. So again, thanks for having me.
Yep. All right, we out.
All right.
For sure this time.
I want to know, did you look us up or did you actually remember us?
I remember.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Well, again, right?
Because you freaking